I honor my Father, while you fail to honor me. I do not seek glory for myself. Do we? There is one who does seek it, and he passes judgment. Yesterday, I paused on the frontier between time and eternity. Not too far from the Hermitage is a place where that can be done. It's the High Cross of Monaster Boys. That's there, standing and preaching without a word to all who pass by about precisely eternity. When it was chiselled and put there many centuries ago, people were simple, people could not read, but they had ways and means of preaching and getting the truth home. And all who stood before that cross and read it, for it's the gospel in stone, got the message and got it loud and clear. Now, one scene in particular caused my mind to race into the beyond and to stay there. It's the very centre of it where, as in the Celtic cross in general over Ireland, the Redeemer is at the crux of all. And on his right are those who accept, and on his left are those who reject. That is classic, and it's very well preserved in that particular high cross. You can see the demons, you can see the horror in the souls who have said no. And you can see the glory on the right. Angels and music, they've made it. Come, you blessed of my Father. But just below is that moment before that division takes place. You may know that when the Jews reached Auschwitz in the specially prepared train, they would be put in a queue and they would be judged on arrival. That side or that side. Those who were not fit to work went straight into the gas chamber. It's rather a gruesome way of seeing actually what death is for those who are not prepared. Now, we may think that we're brighter sparks than those who went before us. We may, with the smile of reason, look back at them and say, oh, they were simple souls. They needed all that. Well, I've got news for you. They knew more than we did about what actually mattered. We, with all our sophistication, don't know what matters. And the proof is, where is our mind, our energy, our time, and therefore our soul going? Look at the planet. How much energy is being sucked, I mean human soul energy, into the virtue. Young people now grow into a world where that is very much centre stage. That is reality. Do you think they have time to think about that one matter that mattered a lot to these simple people? Come off it. Grow up. Well, I'm afraid they haven't understood actually how clever our greatest enemy is. All he wants is to get their soul. Anything that works, he will use it. Going back to the war, I remember hearing this when in France, with regard to the ways and means of getting victory. Dans la guerre, tous les moyens sont bons. In war, all means are good. Well, the demon is using that ploy. If it works, uses it. And so he will find a way of getting, first of all, the young people. But then he'll find a way also of getting even those before who would not have been that way inclined. How many have not come back to church regularly now after the pandemic? I stay there at this frontier. Listen. I translated this in the 80s in France. This is from the Purgatory manuscript. And what happened there is that the living nun was helping a deceased nun who had died not prepared and was in trouble on the other side. As the nun who had died was being purified, eventually she was able to help the living one who was making penance for her by giving her some knowledge of what was going on in the beyond. So these are worth remembering, lest we forget the matter. Are you still comfortably? Then I shall begin. Now this is straight from Purgatory. As for the degrees in Purgatory, I can well speak of them, because I've passed through them. In the ground Purgatory, le Grand Purgatoire, there are different degrees. In the lowest and most painful, which in fact is a temporary hell. Now, the authors who know about this, and those who've had experiences, will underline that fact. There are souls at that level who shouldn't really be there. They should be further down. But the Lord has just done something, perhaps through somebody else's prayer and penance, to get some spark, which make an eternal difference at that point. But it seems that when they get to that point, if they're in that state, really deserving the other place, they still carry with them for a while some of the traits in their soul, and their soul looks ugly, and they have still some reactions of their naughty soul. Now, this area is very, very close to the other. I think you know where I mean. And as regards at least that part, the deepest level of purgatory and hell itself, they both work on the same heating system. So, a temporary hell are those sinners who have committed enormous crimes during their lives, who have been taken by surprise in this same state by death, a death which gave them barely enough time to recognize their own condition. That's why to die, even in an accident or in an illness which one knows to be terminal, or even actually, strangely enough, knowing the date of one's execution, can be a saving grace. Do you know what happened? Go back to the war. After the end of the war, there was, I believe, one of the head men of Auschwitz. Now, he, during the height of the terrible persecution of the Jews and some Christians, including like Edith Stein, Maximilian Kolbe, and so on, he one day was confronted with somebody who came to the camp who was a Jesuit priest, who had handed himself in because all his brethren had been taken and he didn't want to leave them alone. He looked at him and said to him, "Go and do something useful." That was unexpected. He went, survived the war, And when it came to the trials at the end of the war, that same responsible of Auschwitz was sentenced to execution. But something, because he knew that his end was near, made him cringe. He had been baptized, and something moved him, but they couldn't find a priest to help him. He pleaded, and eventually they found one. It was in the Divine Mercy Shrine in Krakow, I believe. And it was that same Jesuit that he allowed to go away and do something useful. He came and heard his confession, which lasted, I believe, an hour and a half. And he went to his execution. Saved by that Redeemer on the same high cross at Monaster Boys, who offered that to all who passed that way. That many don't need, it seems. They have been saved as by a miracle, often through the prayers of devout parents or others. In some cases, they were not even able to go to confession, and the world thought them lost. But the good Lord, whose mercy is infinite, gave them, at the moment of death, the contrition necessary for salvation. Remember that lady who just lost her husband through suicide and went to Cure Vase? She was in desperate situations of soul. My husband must be lost with that suicide. And the Cure Vase just said, calm down, my dear. Your husband, between the bridge and the water, is an act of contrition. So, his mercy is infinite, and he gave them at the moment of death the contrition necessary for salvation in view of one or several acts which they did during their lives. That same Cure Vase to another lady who came to him with the same desperate situation of husband lost without the sacraments, but not to suicide, just not practicing. Cure Vase calmed her. My dear, do you remember those flowers that your husband helped to pick for the Blessed Virgin Mary? The Blessed Virgin Mary received those flowers and obtained his salvation at the last. A soul is not fundamentally bad usually. There's something there which we can pull out. Don't push a soul down ever. Lift that soul up. For these souls, purgatory is terrible. It is hell. With this exception that in hell, God is cursed. Whereas in purgatory, he is blessed and thanked for having saved us. It's the one who gets there. Only purgatory. Then, this is the next bit now, next degree, come the souls who, though they may not have committed great crimes like those in the first group, have been indifferent towards God during their lives. They did not fulfill their Easter duties. Now, how many will not go to confession? And some actually will go to communion without confession in this next period. And having been converted likewise at the hour of death, often without being able to receive a communion, they are in purgatory to make up for their prolonged indifference, suffering unheard of pains, abandoned without prayers, or if prayers are offered on their behalf, unable to gain anything from them. This Holy Mass is offered, by the way, for the souls in purgatory. Then, finally, there are, in this purgatory, lukewarm religious of both sexes, oblivious of their duties, indifferent towards Jesus, priests who, having failed to exercise their ministry with due reverence, now the Lord is very keen on reverence, and the priest has a rough time if he hasn't got it, due to sovereign majesty, did not cause God to be loved by the souls entrusted to them as they should have done. The priest has a huge power of influence, for good or for bad. A priest who talks in church is responsible for all the consequences of those who follow the example. Then we have this last bit, because she goes into this, that this was her degree, that one we just mentioned there, but then this next one. Now, in theological terms, I put it this way. The body can't suffer in purgatory because it's not there. But it's the soul that is the guilty party. The body has obeyed the soul, and the soul has all the faculties in it corresponding to the commands of the body. So it will be tormented there where it has commanded badly. So that explains. Now these are what we call in French la peine du sens, the pain of the sense or senses. That's kind of physical even though it's spiritual. Now the other, la peine du don, is the pain of loss. That's purely spiritual. Listen to this. In the second purgatory are to be found the souls of those who die with the guilt of venial sins which were not expiated before death, or of mortal sins which have been forgiven, but for which divine justice has not received entire satisfaction. In this purgatory too, there are different degrees, corresponding to the merits of each person. Thus, the purgatory of consecrated souls, or of people who have received more abundant graces, is longer and more painful than that of ordinary folk. Last of all, there is the purgatory of desire. Here we have just the pain of loss. Now what's happening is the soul now has no distraction. It's just what it is and knows what it's made for. It's yearning, yearning, yearning. It can't get there. Called forecourt. Very few people avoid it. Apparently, even Padre Pio had a tiny moment in purgatory. And that's why, before dying, he pleaded with people not to call him a saint, because he knew that they wouldn't pray for him if they did. Very few people avoid it. To do so, one must have desired heaven and the vision of God ardently. And then that is rare. Rarer than people think. Because a large number of people, even devoted ones, are afraid of God and don't desire heaven with sufficient ardour. Basically, it's the question of the intensity of love and bonding. That's the essence. Christianity is not so much a religion as a relationship. Work on that, the rest will follow. E.g., how can we love a person and then hurt him by doing something he doesn't want? Bad language, e.g. There's no need for that. Weed it out this Lent. This purgatory has its really painful martyrdom, like the others. Deprivation of the sight of Jesus, how it aches. I propose therefore to you to accompany the Lord in this Passion Tide, day by day, especially in the Great Week. Already things changed. We noticed that there's no Gloria, there's no Psalm at the foot of the altar. Things are simpler now in Passion Tide. And then, from next Sunday onwards, we have the Maximum, the High Week, Hebdomada Major. And in Triduum we need to be absolutely focused. And by the way, on Holy Thursday, there's a huge amount of grace around in the church. And many young men hear the call and the whisper from the tabernacle of repose on Holy Thursday night. Don't let this grace go by the wayside. Plug in and love Jesus, and then the rest